Hey everybody, I'm Gilad Goldstein and I'm here with Kenra Professional to show you how to do the butterfly cut. So I've been creating this cut a lot on shorts, on reels, and you might have seen this cut maybe abridged, but I'm really excited because today I'm bringing you the full length version, so you're gonna get an in-depth understanding of how to create these feathered butterfly layers for all of your clients with long hair. So if you're ready to get started, let's jump on in. So before we do anything with the butterfly cut, I wanna prep with my favorite cutting lotion. I'm using the Kenra Platinum Pearl Detangler just to add a little bit of moisture to the hair. And this is really important, especially with long haircuts, because I find that when I'm working with long hair, some of the sections take a little longer to cut. This cutting lotion is going to maintain that moisture throughout the haircut so it stays evenly saturated. It'll give me better results. When you're working in the salon also, I definitely recommend always picking up a cutting aid. There's just nothing like being able to use a product to give you smoother, moisturized results in the hair, but it also gives you that ability to condense your sections better, get a cleaner cut, and you'll end up with more precision in your haircuts, which will lead to better results for your clients. Now, I'm starting off with sectioning. So I'm taking a parting from the high point and I'm taking that down to the ear. So we're separating the front and back. I've already created a center parting, so you can see the left and right sides are divided. Now we're just making sure to separate the front and back. A little trick for those of us who don't love to section in the salon is if you don't feel like wrapping all of your sections up and getting everything pre-done, just grab a couple of these clips and use them to keep any hair that you're not cutting out of the way. Because I find especially on long hair, it's really easy to add in sections that don't need to be cut and then you end up with holes in your haircut. Now the butterfly cut is designed to have that kind of winged look, so we want to make sure that there's layers that are framing the face really well. Let's create our guideline in the center front. So I'm grabbing just enough hair to create a strong guideline. Make sure that your section is thick enough. This might even be too thin, so what I like to do is measure my section for the guide, and I'll use my finger as a guide for the width. So you can place your finger, and your guide should be about a finger's width. That's going to make it strong enough so that you can see it as you're cutting. We are going to start the layers right at the neck. So we can always take it shorter, but I find it's better to start this haircut a little bit longer, especially because we're trying to maintain length. A short layer guide is going to result in taking off a lot more hair. So leave a little bit more than you want because it's going to save you in the end when you want to maintain that length. Now starting on the left side, I'm combing the hair back and we're going to separate the top and bottom. So you can do this by finding where the hairline begins to curve. Once you found that place, take a horizontal parting to separate the top and bottom. We're going to work our layers from top to bottom. So it's important because since our elevation is going to be higher in the top and lower on the bottom, we want to make sure to part the sections off first to stay really clean and organized. And once again, I'm going to take a clip and just section out the bottom of the hair that we're not cutting quite yet. Now in the salon, a really great tip is to make sure to lower the client as far as you can, because when we're elevating for a butterfly cut, we want to get really high to create those soft layers. So take that chair, pump it all the way down so that when you're lifting that hair, it's natural. I'm standing in front of the head. And this is because we're also over-directing all of the hair to the front. So if I were to stand behind the head and push it forward, it's gonna feel really uncomfortable as I'm trying to cut. So body position is key. Make sure to stand right in front. You can really position yourself even better just by placing the comb on your chest. It kind of acts as an extension to where you're standing, so you can get a really clean sense of where you're standing for your haircut. All of this hair is going to be elevated above 90 degrees. So I'm gonna work in a couple subsections just to maintain control. I'm going to divide this first section in half, and then we'll just clip the hair out of the way that we're not cutting. So this is what your first section should look like. It's just enough to really find your guideline, but also to create a strong face frame. So make sure that you have a nice strong section, and then position your body right in front of the head. Now I have her facing sideways so you can see how high I'm elevating. If you need even more elevation, you can actually tilt the head down, and that's gonna make it easier to, again, naturally lift that hair up. So it's really about finding your comfort zone, because whenever you're cutting long hair, it can really break your body, especially for someone like me. I'm only 5'6". So anything I can do to make it easier is definitely a win. So the first cut we did is elevated above 90 degrees, and then I cut a slightly diagonal line that leaves length to the bottom. I'm gonna switch the position here so you can see the cutting line this time. So we're gonna grab the hair from behind. I'm gonna take another small subsection for control and clip any hair that we're not cutting out of the way. Now remember, over direction creates weight and length in the opposite direction. So when we're pulling hair to the front, we're gonna maintain all that length to the back while still cutting shorter layers in the front. So you can see here, we're lifting that hair up, and now I'm looking for my guide. So you wanna really find your guide first, and then you can make your cut. Now this might be too much hair for me to control in one section, but we're gonna try it anyway. Let's see if we can grab it. There we go. We're lifting that hair up. Always check your elevation. So the mirror will tell you how high you're elevating the hair. Sometimes it's really hard to see if you're trying to position yourself to see, but also stay in front of the head. So I like to use the mirror in the salon to double check where I'm lifting the hair to. And once the hair is completely combed up, elevated, find your cutting line, and then make your cut. And you can point cut if you want at this point. The first cut, I always do a blunt cut because I think setting the guideline, I want it to feel really strong so I can see it. But once you've found your guideline, you can go in there and just start point cutting to create softness in the ends. I'm taking the last section, so we've done 3 subsections in the top area. And then one last time so you can see where we're lifting, finding our cutting line. Once you find your guide, you can make your point cuts. Now make sure to comb the hair out and see what you've done before you move on. So I'm gonna take the wide teeth of the comb, combing all the hair forward, and I'm really looking for that cutting line. So you'll see it has a nice curved shape with a little bit of length leading to the bottom and the back. When I comb the hair into natural fall, you'll really be able to see what the over direction did by looking at that angle that we started to create in the layers. So that's gonna give you that nice butterfly effect that when it's blown dried away from the face, you'll have those nice wings in your layers. Now I'm gonna start to connect the sides into the top. So the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna take our top section, and remember we pre-sectioned this so we can stay really clean and organized. I'm taking a very small sliver of hair from the bottom of that top section, and the rest of the hair is going to get clipped out of the way. Now we're in control and we can focus on just cutting the sides. Once again, because a butterfly cut is focused on creating layers in the front and maintaining length in the back, I'm shifting my body so that I'm standing in front of the head because we're going to pull all that hair to the front. The difference with the side section is now our elevation isn't going to be quite as high. So I'm going to work with a 90-degree elevation, finding my cutting line, and now I'm going to twist my fingers so I can continue to see my cutting line, and I'm going to leave a little bit of length to the bottom. From the guide, we're just going to start cutting. I'm going to take a little bit more hair. Remember, only cut what you can control. So you'll see if that hair is dropping out, that's okay. Only cut the hair that you can control on your fingers. Now I'm just going to point cut and blend these layers all the way down into the length. And remember, your mirror is your friend. So if you're in the salon, use your mirror to check your elevation, and that's gonna help keep everything really clean on each side. Now we're combing this out, and you can see all of those layers blending down into the length. That is satisfying. You can see all of those little layers that blend from the top layering we created all the way down into the length on the sides. Now here so you can get the full picture. Now here's the full picture. I'm gonna comb the top section into the rest so we can really see how it all marries together. So let's comb this together. And you can see your layers getting from short to long. That's gonna give you that perfect feathered effect once you blow dry the hair. And we already set that guide in center front, so I'm gonna use that same guide to cut the other side. Remember, when sectioning out that top from the bottom, you wanna look for where the hairline is beginning to curve, because we're only really doing the heavy layering on top, and then we're just kind of graduating the layers at the bottom. So I'm looking for where the hairline curves. That's telling us where we're going to separate the top and the bottom. I'm just gonna take a horizontal parting to get that organized. So I separated the top and bottom on the other side, where the hairline begins to curve with a horizontal parting. And then we're just clipping the bottom out of the way. Remember, whenever we're elevating the hair, we want to make it easy on our bodies because I don't know about you, I want to have a long career. So make sure that if you can't get the guest any lower with the chair, just ask her to tilt her head down. Some of the things to keep in mind whenever we're doing this haircut is that we're actually removing length in the front. So it's really important to have that communication with your client before you start cutting that they will be losing some length in the front for this specific haircut. Now, if they want to keep all their length in the front but also have a sense of layers, there are other options. Like they could get a square layered haircut or they could do ghost layers. But for the butterfly cut, make sure that you're communicating that yes, we are going to get this feathered layered look. You will lose some length in the front, even though we're maintaining it in the back. Just important to have that clarity so there are no surprises once the hair's all done. So I'm lifting above 90 degrees, using my mirror to check where I'm lifting, finding my cutting line, and then point cutting. When I was learning how to cut hair and trying to understand the differences with elevations, I had a pretty fundamental understanding of like 45 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and I think we all get that in school. But something that made it easier for me to select how I'm going to elevate the hair is understanding what the elevation will do to the final look of the shape. So whenever I'm elevating above 90 degrees, I know that I can expect really soft layers that are really blended. Now, if I elevate lower, I'm going to build graduation, which is building weight and volume, and that can result in something a little heavier and chunkier. So with the butterfly cut, because we're trying to create a really seamless look that's blended and soft with the layers, but still really visible, elevating above that 90 degrees is going to get that result that feels really impactful, but also ends up looking very soft. So we just cut the top. Remember, we're going to take a small sliver from the top to use as the guide for the bottom. And I'm just clipping the rest of the hair out of the way. Maintain that same body position in front. And then remember, we're just going to shift our elevation. So we just talked about how a high elevation creates that softness. This straight elevation, or a 90-degree elevation, is going to cause a very visible, harder layer. If we elevate it higher, it's going to be more invisible and you're not going to be able to see the layers. So since I want to see some of that face framing, I'm going to lower the elevation so that it's really visible and you can get that satisfying effect. And then whenever we're moving on to the next section, you can grab the hair, grab a small panel from your previous guide, only grab what you can control, and once you've reached your point of the guide, twist your fingers and cut to maintain length to the back. Get one last section, so repeating that same movement and blending down into the length. Beautiful. So before you move on to the back, double check what you've created in the front. You should see a natural fall that your layers are curving and blending all the way down into the length. As you comb with the fine teeth of your comb, you want to look for those little layers to be popping out as you work your way down. That tells you that you've created consistent layers all the way throughout. So when you blow dry, you're going to see all that feathering in the haircut. That's what your clients are looking for. You also want to check for balance in the front. So make sure that you've worked a pretty consistently even diagonal line on each side so that you have the same amount of layers. It's really easy to get a little bit more diagonal on one side or a little bit more horizontal, and that'll create an uneven shape. So one side might feel a little bit more layered, one might be a little bit more blunt. So again, this is something that comes with practice, but using your mirror as a tool to see your elevation, really shifting your body position so you're standing comfortably in front of the head, and then just twisting your fingers horizontal once you cut the sides to check your cutting line. Those are the things that you're going to want to master to create a really even blended face frame for the butterfly cut. So now that we finished the front, I'm just going to move on to the back. And we're going to start by dividing it in half. So make sure you have the left and right side sectioned out. We're going to continue the same movements we did in the front. So we're over directing to the front and using the same cutting lines. The key is going to be making sure that we can marry the sections together. Starting on the left side, I'm going to divide the top from the bottom of the back. So you can do this by simply taking the hair, combing it towards the front, and then place your comb flat on the head. Now you'll see where the comb is lifting off the head is where the head shape is curving or changing direction. That point is going to tell you where to divide the top from the bottom of the back section. So you can take a horizontal parting just to get that cleanly sectioned out. Now at this point, if you're like me, you have a bunch of clips on your shirt, so just clip the rest of the bottom out of the way, and we're gonna cut the top layers first. This is where the system kind of works because we're sectioning and we're combing the hair all the way to the front. So we're always working with the end result in mind. I tend to like to comb the hair in the direction that it's going to be cut just to save myself a little effort. If I'm combing the hair back and I know I'm going to go forward, it's just extra work. So sectioning forward is going to work with this haircut. And I'm just lowering the head so that we can lift comfortably. Since we finished cutting that front section, that becomes our guide for the back. So we're able to take a pretty large section in the back because our guide is so thick that we're still able to see where we're cutting. I'm making sure to lift that hair, and you can see I'm having a little bit of a hard time. So remember, ask her to tilt her head down. That's gonna make your elevation a lot easier. Pulling that section towards me, I'm elevating that hair, and I'm gonna divide this subsection into two because I have smaller fingers. So I'm taking another parting, and I'm separating the bottom of the section from the top. Now I'm going to start and work my way from top to bottom. So I'm pulling my hair up above 90 degrees, combing nice and clean, looking for that cutting line. You can lift the hair up with your comb, and then making my point cuts. Now this part, usually the back, I always found to be the hardest part to layer when doing a haircut. But the butterfly cut makes it so simple because we're using a stationary guide in the front. And just for a little hairdresser context, whenever we're doing over direction to a stationary guide, we're creating maximum increase of weight and length in the opposite direction. So because we're pulling all of the hair from the back to the front, that means we're going to get an extreme length increase once we comb the hair back. So I guess I could show that to you. I'm gonna comb that hair out. And you'll start to see that line that gets longer to the back. As I comb it out even more, you can see it gets even longer. So if you think about what that's creating, it's giving us a V shape in the layers. So now we're creating a V shape in the layers, and we're also going to get that in the length. And it's really great because it creates that shape that clients are asking for, where they want that shortness in the front and that really beautiful taper into the back. Now, just like we did in the front, I'm going to take a small sliver of hair from the bottom of the top section. That's going to serve as our guide for the bottom. We'll take the rest of the hair, comb it up and away to the opposite side, and then clip so it's out of your way. Now, as you can see, the back is a really large section, so we're going to have to break it down. I'm going to comb it forward because we're pulling the hair forward, and we're just dividing the bottom from the top. Standing in the front, pulling the hair at 90 degrees. Remember, the top is above 90 degrees, and now this bottom section on the sides is elevated to 90 degrees, so it's a shift or lowering of the elevation. We find our guide for the cutting line, twist so we can see it even better, and now that I can see it, we're just going to follow our cutting line that we created in the front. As we move down the section, take another small slice to continue your guideline, comb the rest of the hair out of the way. I'm going to take only as much hair as I can control, over directing to the stationary guideline, and connecting our cut. So it's kind of cool because you can see that even though this cut feels and looks really intricate, it's a very simple system of just using over direction and elevation to create a layered effect. So I'm going to do the last subsection. Now, as you reach the nape section, continue with that same 90-degree elevation, and then just connect. Now you can see that while we layered the hair, we've maintained a lot of that length from the back. So take a look at what we just created. I combed the section out in a natural fall, and you can see the shape of the ends goes into that V. So by pulling it all to the front, we've created a V shape in the layers and a V shape in the perimeter all in one cut. Now we will get to refine that at the end, but I'm going to go through and do the same process on the other side so you can see that result in the final. Now I can totally feel that this hair is drying out, so I'm going to add a little bit more moisture before I continue to cut. This is where the cutting lotion comes in handy for me. So instead of using water, I'll usually re-moisturize with a cutting aid. So this is the Platinum Pearl Detangler. And it's lightweight enough that it's not gonna add too much grease to the hair when I dry it, but it helps to keep that moisture in so that as I'm cutting, it's gonna be easier for me. If you're not using a cutting aid in the salon, try it out. It's gonna make such a difference. When I think about who a butterfly cut is good for, it's definitely that haircut for the long-haired people who want to keep all that length and get a lot of layers. But what I love about it is that it's super versatile in how it can be worn. So you can wear the hair up, let those layers fall and get a little bit of a romantic feeling. It looks great in updos. And I also love how it looks in a ponytail. That's probably my favorite thing to show my clients before they leave, is I'll spin the chair around and I'll grab the hair, I'll put it all together, and they're like, wow, it looks like little waterfalls. So it's cool to share these moments with your client to show them how they can wear their hair. Don't just give them the haircut, but also give them the options to know how to style it, what they can do with it, so that they're really excited about a look, especially when it's a drastic change like the butterfly cut. Because you can see a lot of hair is falling, so just imagine what your guest is feeling in the salon. She might be a little bit concerned. So with that being said, making sure to educate them on what they're getting, why you're doing what you're doing, and just all the benefits and the ways that they can style their hair, it's gonna make it a better experience for the client. So for the final step of the wet cut, we already created our layers, we created a V shape for the perimeter. I'm just gonna go in and refine any of the ends if they're a little dry or just need to be evened out. We'll just check out that final ends and make sure that it's even on each side. So I like to pull them to the front for this part because if I'm thinking about a guest pushing their hair forward or a client pulling their hair forward, I want to make sure that what they see is really beautiful and connected. So I'm pulling that hair from the back to the front, making sure all the layers are blending their way down so that they're nice and seamless. But you want to feel like you have layers that are working from the top all the way to the bottom length. Once the front is looking like what you want it to, you're going to turn the hair to the back, comb it into its natural fall, and then just refine the shape from there. So you'll already have a base that's pretty much a V shape because of what we did in the haircut. But now we can just go in and at natural fall, make sure that the ends of the perimeter look exactly the way you want them to. This is a good point to see if all of your lines are connecting really cleanly, and just trim off any excess dryness that you may have missed during the haircut. So I'm feeling pretty good about the shape right now. We're gonna blow dry the hair, and then we're gonna do some dry cutting to refine the texture. Before I blow dry, I'm putting in some of the Kenra blow dry spray. This is giving some heat protection, as well as helping to speed up the blow dry process, which is really helpful on long hair. I'm also applying some of the Kenra Volume Mousse. This is going to give the hair a little bit of hold and extra texture so that when we create that feathered look in the blow dry, it stays all day. Volume Mousse is pretty much a mainstay in my kit. As a stylist who works behind the chair and on set, when I need the hair to last all day, especially with long hair, I always apply mousse because it gives that texture that the hair needs so that when we curl it, it's not going to fall immediately. You can see all of those layers blended from that shortest layer all the way down into the length. When the hair is brought to the back, you'll be able to see how those layers are actually falling into more of a V shape. So you get a really soft blend of those short layers all the way down into that length. This version of the butterfly cut is one of my favorites because it doesn't have a ton of excessive layers at the bottom where the hair just kind of flips out all the time. You can still wear your hair nice and sleek if you want, but you can also really showcase all the layers that you cut just by adding a little bit of movement. To finish off the cut, I'm gonna go back in through our subsections and I'm just gonna point cut to release a little bit of the weight. So try to mirror the same elevation that you used in your wet cut as you're texturizing. And that's gonna make it easier to find your cutting lines and see where you wanna diffuse any weight. And most of the texturizing we do is going to be in the front, so don't worry so much about the back. Since we were over-directing hair to the front, we didn't cut as many layers in the back. So there's a lot less to texturize unless you're trying to remove a lot of weight in high-density hair. But this will be customized based on your client. So you can see where that blunt line is that we cut in the wet cut. That's what we're going to want to look to diffuse. So I'm using a long shear. If you have a long shear that's a 6.5 or a 7-inch, this is a great time to pull out that tool as it's going to make getting into the hair and diffusing the ends so much easier. I was very much anti-long scissor as someone who has small hands, but I did realize that working on longer lengths, it made it easier to really cut into them. So if you haven't tried a long shear, definitely recommend giving it a try. Another method of texturizing you can do on a butterfly cut if the hair is very thick is to slice. So I'm going in at the very ends and I'm just topping my shear all the way to the ends. So we're doing this technique on kind of the last part of the hair or the very ends, but we're just slicing a little bit of weight away to create space. Now the hair doesn't feel quite as dense or thick right there, which means that the feathering is going to look really beautiful as it falls back. But I would only really recommend doing this technique in the top sections of the hair because I want to maintain fullness for my clients in the bottom. So you don't want to remove too much weight, otherwise it can make the hair look thin. So here's the final result of the butterfly haircut. You can see the nice feathered layers that we created, reminiscent of that old 70s hairstyle where it has a lot of volume and a lot of feathering to really showcase and enhance this really beautiful butterfly effect. So you have the wings from the butterfly cut, and then it goes all the way down into that length and that really beautiful face framing at the bottom. Remember, the key points are to lower the guest so you can elevate the hair high so you can get that really soft look in your layers that are shorter. But then when you want to create the face framing, lower the elevation so that way it becomes more visible and that your client gets a really beautiful face frame that they can see and enjoy. So thank you for following along with this butterfly haircut. It's been really fun and I hope you gained some new knowledge that you can use in the salon. So leave a comment if you learned something new. And if you like this content, make sure to follow Kenra Professional and I'll see you in the next video.